Hey, Adam. Oh, I forgot you're not here. Well, we do have a replacement today, Christian Sands. So let's dig into part two of our co-hosting experience with pianist Christian Sands. This is the You'll Hear It podcast, daily jazz advice coming at you. I want to play a track, but I just kind of want to ask you a question first,
Sure.
And that is, like, you cover a lot of styles on this album, like genres, and I think you do it super successfully, and at times you do it very abruptly, which is a cool thing, and it's a little bit unusual because a lot of times people, musicians, artists want to say, well, this is all part of who I am. And of course, for all of us, all the
Right.
influences in music. But you do some very deft and skillful kind of jumping back and forth between styles. And so if it's cool, I was just going to play a little of the beginning of Yesterday,
Yeah.
and then just get your thoughts on that. Nice. Oh, sorry. I should have had a slicker fade there, but man, I could listen to this all day. So I love that, like, you got a couple different things happening, and I just want to say to all the like jazz piano nerds, check out the way Christian is playing the left and right hand right at the beginning. Like he basically you've created like you're playing with a different kind of touch and sound with that left hand quarter note going, and then the way that you're playing the melody. And that's really what I think of as voicing. And I think there's a lot, you guys can check that out and kind of try to emulate some of that stuff and use it in your own way. But that's just incredible pianistic skills. So my hat's off to you for that.
Thank you.
But yeah, so you're starting with kind of like, old school solo piano kind of vibe. And then you go into, of course, with the trio, you got the gospel influences happening, but you go straight from that solo piano feel. I don't know. Is that correct, calling it solo piano feel?
Yeah, you can call it that.
Yeah. I mean, that could be anything, I guess. But, but then you go right into like, the backbeat with, that sharp nine and stuff. So as you put this arrangement together, like, was that kind of intentional, or was it just sort of what you heard and you put it together as an arrangement?
It's basically what I heard. I wanted it to groove, and I really got the arrangement from listening to a lot of Errol Garner lately. I'm the creative ambassador of the Errol Garner project now, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And so going through archives and listening to Errol's music and some recordings that have never been released and some practice sessions and things like that, And so he has a version of Yesterday. And, Errol is straight up swinging all the time. For the most part, about 90% of the time, Errol's going to swing. But then there's these other times where he does these different grooves and like maybe a mambo thing or a swinging mambo here and there or something like that. So Errol, what I came away with was Errol's a big fan of groove. And if Errol was around today, like, how would he play music? He would still swing, of course, but like, what else would he do?
He might be up in the club, and we don't know.
Exactly.
You know what I'm
You have no idea, Club Onyx featuring Errol. So I want to kind of do an arrangement based off of the music that I was listening to with Errol. And so the beginning with the quarter note in the left hand, that's kind of the echo of an Errol Garner, Garner-esque kind of vibe, And then going into the groove, what I liked about Errol was that every time he would start a intro, you would never know what it was until he started the tune, you know? And so I kind of took that idea and said, well, I'm starting the tune in the Errol way, but now where can we go where we can make a surprise? And it sort of just naturally going into, I like the groove, and I mean, we all like the groove. So kind of just naturally going into that, it kind of worked, you know, it kind of changed some things around. It kind of gave it a little pick me up. And then I decided to stop it. So it's kind of this play with the audience, play with the listener of, okay, when is this going to happen? When is this not going to happen? So instead of just constantly changing, you know, chords around and reharms and doing the things that pianists can do, you know, let's just specifically just mess with rhythm and stop it. And, you know, let's mess with rests, and let's mess with, you know, fading and doing different things. So that's really how this arrangement came about.
Oh, it's great, man. And it's actually some of the analysis we did on Rebel Music yesterday. We kind of talked about some of those same ways that you use that compositionally and the arrangement of how you put together. And I can really, you know, with things going back and forth, like a lot of times, and it's great lessons for, like, we have a lot of younger and like students listening to the podcast that I've met. For you guys, it's a great thing to think about the drama, you know, how you can break that down with the architecture of a tune or an arrangement. And it doesn't have to not only be the typical ways, but it can be abrupt, you know. I mean, it can't just, this arrangement does not come across sounding random, but it's abrupt at times. And as you say, you're able to kind of play with with the listener, and that's the drama of an arrangement that keeps people enjoying it. Like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, is it going to go back? Even if they don't know or thinking about consciously what's going on, they remember that sound,
like,
you know.
Exactly, you know, and I'm a big fan of art, you know, visual art too. So like, I'm a big fan of Picasso, and I like how when you, especially his cubism phase, where it is exactly, you know, if you're looking at a person, right, and it's really a person, and you can tell it is because your brain is making that. Your brain is seeing these shapes, and it's saying that this is a human being. But then the nose is not where it's supposed to be, and the eyes are not where they're supposed to be. So there's this little trick with your mind too that kind of questions that, what am I really looking at? Even though you kind of know that this is a portrait or a self-portrait or something like that, you know. So I kind of take those ideas of just different art styles and kind of put them in my music too.
Yeah, great stuff, man. Great stuff. So let's just talk. I'd love to go through like this whole album, and I want to, if you're cool with it, have you back on the show, because there's a lot of
anytime, man.
Yeah, man, a lot more stuff we can dive into. But I was just, you know, it's Yasushi Nakamura and Jerome Jennings, which is your regular trio.
That's right.
For a while now, who's kind of the backbone of this album. You've got some great other guests and bringing in the horns and the percussion. Some really cool. I wasn't familiar with that guitarist. Who was that?
Oh, Kyle, man, he's killer.
He is killing.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually was introduced to him by my younger brother, Ryan Sands, who, so those of you that know, he's an amazing drummer, fabulous drummer. And
shout out Ryan. What's up?
Right, shout out to Ryan, Afro Samurai. You know, and he went to NEC, New England Conservatory, and so did Kyle. And so they were like great friends, like best friends. You know, and so he had called me up one day. He was like, man, you got to hear this guitarist, man. You know, like, we're playing tonight, so come up to Boston. And I was like, all right, cool. So I had nothing to do. So I drove up to Boston and checked it out. And this cat was like extra killer. You know, the tunes that he wrote were like amazing. His touch, his feel, everything was tasty. Everything was like, you know, and so, but he was doing really modern music, you know. And so I talked to him afterwards. I was like, man, you know, where are you from? You know? He was like, yeah, I'm from Sao Paulo. And I was like, oh, killing. So, which also meant that he had all the samba and all that Brazilian stuff too, you know. And so I was looking for a guitarist for this gig, and I usually used Gilad Hexelman. He's on my last record, and so Gilad couldn't make it. And so I was like, well, let me call Kyle. Let me see if he's around. And so we all went to Canada, and we did a little tour, and it was absolutely amazing. And everything we did, I mean, from playing obscure music to playing Brazilian music to playing, I mean, you know, I love different styles. So whatever I wanted to do, he was really down to do it. And did it well.
Yeah.
And things that he didn't know, he went back after the gig or whatever and checked it out and did all his homework. And then the next day, I mean, it's like he knew everything, you know. So he's a really special musician.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more from him. And even though he's just making appearances here and there on your album, I mean, he hit a lot of, well, like a lot of great Brazilian musicians. A lot of people don't realize they can generally play many different styles well, especially the guitarists. You know,
Right.
I mean,
You know,
blues. He got
we would
some
sit
rock
down,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we would sit down and talk about like progressive rock, like Dream Theater, and then we sit down and talk about some, you know, some scratch guitar. You know, talk about Wawa Watson. I mean, like he knew all of the styles. You know? And so he's a hip musician, man.
Well, it definitely comes through on your album. So hats off to you for placing him at some really interesting places. One other thing was like I noticed you hit a lot of styles. I mentioned this earlier, but you hit a lot of different styles and genres. And normally I'm not big into like, oh, this is a polka on this tune, this is a reggae, whatever. But but you do have some overt references at times, and because you're able to kind of very deftly and abruptly move from different things I think in a really interesting and seamless musical way that they are noticed. So I'm hearing for sure gospel, obviously big influence there. Jazz, of course. To me, jazz is really the umbrella with which you're kind of painting everything. Reggae, you definitely hit on some nice reggae grooves in there. Funk for sure. The Errol Garner solo piano and some other solo piano influences. Then you got the Rhodes, you got the organ going, there's some rock stuff happening with those guitar lines on something I heard. But like, did you have like a checklist? I know you didn't, but I'm just wondering because some people think that like that's the way this worked. Or was this just when you were writing, you would hear different things and like, oh, okay, I'm going to put a little bit of a reggae vibe in here because it feels right. Well,
you know what it is that I'm just a composer at heart, you know, and if I can just write tunes for people, I would just do that. You know, I love performing, but I also love to write. And I've always been like that as a kid, you know, and I would always write tunes just for people, you know, just for, I'm going to write my tune for my aunt or write a tune for my dog or like, you know, I was always writing stuff, you know. And so as an adult, I'm still writing for different people. I write for different musicians and I do collaborations. And so with that, you know, kind of comes the love of different styles of music. And different in ways to express yourself. So, you know, I like to express myself in different ways musically and stylistically. So I don't really think of styles when I'm writing it. I really think of the song and what best can tell the story, you know? So like on Sunday mornings, I remember the whole story is me waking up with my brother going to church on Sunday mornings. And there was 3 services, either 7 o'clock or 9:30 service or 11 o'clock service, you know? And I've been to all 3 throughout my life, you know. So either you go to 7 o'clock because you're with your aunt, or you go to 9:30 because you're with my mother, or you go to 11 o'clock because you're older and you were at the club the night before. So now you got to wake up, you know. So there's these different experiences that I've had that help me tell the story. And so Sunday mornings, for example, is something that reflects that experience. So it's not really, I wasn't thinking like, okay, I want to do a gospel tune. It was more of like, this was in my life, so what best helps me with that? And then the reggae that goes into that is a service or a song that we sung in church where had a reggae feel to it. You know, anytime you hear like, you know, you listen to a Kirk Franklin or Ty Tribbett, they also have these different sounds within their music too, you know.
Well, they'd always have like the drummer, they always have a rhythm section that could like play any style and just instantly groove, you know, and ready to do it too.
Exactly. So all of that is kind of in my music. So my music is really just all of my personal experience that I'm sure that many people have also experienced. And if they haven't, then they're experiencing it through my music kind of secondhand.
Oh, that's great. I love that too. I was just talking with another jazz musician about you know, how kind of our job, we forget sometimes with all the C7 sharp 9 and the reggae groove or whatever, but our job is really to like look at the world and our experience in it and then express it in this music and present it to people. I mean, that's kind of our thing. And
I feel like we get lost in that because, you know, especially lately, we have a lot of musicians that come out of conservatories, and that's not the focal point. The focal point of conservatory is to give you the fundamentals and make you a person who can play, really like anything. If you get it in front of you, you can read, you can write, you can do all this stuff. But then what do you do with that? Like, where's the humanity in that?
Right. It's just that's the jumping off point.
Right. And that I think separates great musicians from just musicians, where you just kind of regurgitate information versus like, now what can I do with that information that reflects my life or what I've heard or reflects your life, Yeah. So that's really what it's all about.
That's great. Okay, so sometimes I misinterpret songs. So Sunday mornings, I was thinking as I listened to it, it was about going to Cracker Barrel. Okay, now I know it's about going to church. See?
Well, it kind of is about going to Cracker Barrel too. We went there after, that or Hometown Buffet or.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, Christian, thank you so much for being here, for doing this as the official first ever guest co-host.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, this is going to go down in history. And if Adam doesn't make it back from the Gen conference and you're looking for something to do for like 12 minutes every day,
hey, I'm down.
We could hop on the phone. We'll see how that goes.
I'm ready.
But I want everybody, all our listeners, to go out and check out Facing Dragons. It's on Mac Avenue, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Mac Avenue label, available on all the streaming platforms. But you know what? This is a good one. You might want to pick up on CD, or you could sit and stream it. But like I said at the beginning, like take some time, maybe open up a nice bottle of Barolo or something. And this is a fun one to kind of listen to from beginning.
We
to
also
end.
have vinyl too, so it's also on vinyl.
Come on now. I'm gonna have to put my flannel shirt on and put a hat and grow my beard and bust out my vinyl. I'll do it.
Right. Come on. Let's do it.
No, it'd be a great one on vinyl. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
So the way we normally end this is one of us says you'll hear it at the end, and like the other one says something kind of funny. So I'm gonna say something funny. Are you ready to say you'll hear it?
Sure.
Okay. So all right. Well, until next time.
You'll hear it.